Hello, dear viewers.
Hello, everyone.
We are really glad to welcome you on our educational podcast. Our names are
Anastasia Gavrilova.
and Nadezhda Zhukova, and we are the graduates of the Institute of International Education in Moscow State Pedagogical University. And also, we are the practicing teachers of English language to the Russian audience. As representatives of the linguistics faculty in our university, we were exposed to a range of extremely interesting and helpful courses of how to teach the English language, not only to learn it, which is a significant part of studying linguistics, definitely. So these courses inspired us so much that we decided to dive deep into the particular aspects we found most useful, topical, and innovative these days.
So, what we are going to discuss is how the modern methodologies of teaching foreign languages might significantly improve the efficiency of studying. You might have asked, what is the point of these modern methodologies? So, to say it briefly, the modern methodologists, based on the researches and deep studies, gradually came to the conclusion that the system of teaching requires some changes. Which are based on the fundamental shift towards learner-centered approaches, involving learners to be not the passive units consuming the prepared information, but rather the active participants and explorers of the process, gently guided by the teacher.
So, who might be interested in our podcast? Of course, it mostly aimed at promoting and common exploration of modern methodologies together with the foreign language teachers. Not necessarily English. In most cases, it would be applicable for all foreign languages, no matter how skillful and experienced you are. As it is known, continuous education is the skeleton of a successful teacher, so a piece of new knowledge would be a useful thing you all, even if you knew this information. That would be a nice thing to refresh it. And frankly speaking, if you are just studying any foreign language, you are welcomed as well. Perhaps you would reconsider your attitude to the traditional way of studying. Perhaps you will ask your teachers to incorporate some of the techniques. So if you are anyhow connected with studying the foreign language, stay with us. And now we begin.
So, before discussing the new directions in teaching, it's important to first of all understand what the traditional methods represent and why the teachers nowadays are trying to improve them. To begin with, we are talking about the teacher-centered approaches and why we need to incorporate something new. And of course, the most classical method which all of us faced while learning a new language is the so-called grammar translation method, which refers to a teacher-centered approach, and it's just a canonical example. For instance, tell me please, what your classical lesson at school looked like? What kind of tasks did you accomplish?
So we usually had to translate some texts, and sometimes we accomplished the gap filling tasks, and also teacher gives us the dictations. Then she produced some words in English and we wrote them in Russian and vice versa.
So, do you maybe remember having some interactive tasks? Maybe you used to practice speaking with your classmates?
No, I don't think so. Mostly we work with our teacher and she asked some typical questions, for example, how are you, or what is the weather like today? Or with the classmates, we used to learn the dialogues out loud, and I couldn't call this the real communication, and we used to complete tasks which were prescribed by the teacher, and in most cases those were just tasks from the textbook.
Well, this is a really good example to understand what a teacher-centered approach means. It's a way of teaching where the teacher is the main authority in the classroom. In this method, the teacher just lectures, gives information, tasks, and leads discussions while the students listen and take notes. The focus is on the teacher's knowledge and the delivery, and students are expected to absorb the information rather than actively participating or engage in activities. This approach often emphasizes memorization and standardized tests to measure learning. This method is really good from the perspective of a teacher who wants to save some time. It's the easiest way to present information. The lessons built on such methods, for instance GTM, doesn't require any specific preparations. We may just give the ready-made tasks from the textbook to the students, then check it and explain mistakes, and that's all. However, there are some significant drawbacks, and the most obvious one is that it's really hard to inspire the students. So in most cases, such tasks are really boring, and the students are just supposed to keep their mind tense, consuming the information as it is. So can you say that those classes were really helpful? Are you satisfied with them now, already knowing the English language good, and when you are the teacher yourself? So do you still remember something that they gave to you?
Frankly speaking, no, not at all. The brightest thing that I remember is how I struggled with a huge list of new words, and all these translation, they were messed up in my head. And also, I just couldn't get the idea why they have such odd phrases like break your leg or implying ni puha ni pera in Russian. And the direct meaning of this phrase, literally wishing the person to injure his or her body part. This is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, agree. Exactly. This is the grammar translation method, the brightest example of teacher-centered approach. It definitely has some drawbacks, right?
Yes, this is why nowadays modern teachers already start using learner-centered approaches. And it is not a secret that in the 21st century, language learners need skills like critical thinking, collaboration, and the digital literacy, which is connected with the progress, globalization, and the fast-changing world. They need learning experiences that fits their interests and goals. This shift means that traditional teacher-centered approaches, which focus on lecturing and one-size-fits-all methods, are less effective. Actually, as you could already guess, the learner-centered approach is the opposite thing to what we have discussed. Students are being actively engaged in the classroom activities. They tend to talk more and interact with peers and teachers, making the classes rather interesting, lively, and entertaining, which already increases the level of intrinsic motivation. They encourage active participation, exploration, and provide the possibility of individual feedback. Moreover, students get more autonomy, which allows them to feel validated and manifest creativity. Another significant point and the feature of learner-centered approaches is the reduction of TTT, or teacher talking time. It means that the most speaking time of the lesson is dedicated to students, while the teacher is the director of the learning process, who provides the necessary data, materials, instructions, and support, not a monotonous lecture all the time. This is the basis of learner-centered approaches and techniques in modern methodologies. This is basically what our whole podcast is going to be about, and we will start it right now.
All right, let's break down PPP, presentation, practice, production method, which is a super common way to teach languages in the 21st century, especially grammar. So PPP is all about gradually handing over control of the lesson to the students so that they are doing the job instead of just listening to you. It inherently reduces the teacher talking time, and here is how it works. Let's consider the first stage is presentation. You introduce the new language point, keep it short and sweet. So, for example, you are going to teach past simple. So you might say, today we are learning how to talk about things that happened yesterday. I walked to school. Then you might provide them with the rule itself using the classical deductive method. Then comes the stage of practice. Students do controlled exercises to get used to the form and drill the new studied material. You might think of filling the gaps or matching tasks. Finally, stage of production. Now it's their turn. Students use the new language freely in communicative activity like role plays or discussions. For example, you might say, tell your partner about your weekend using the past simple. They speak to each other, not to you. And this is the time of semi-controlled or even free practice. The benefit of PPP is that you, the teacher, do most of the talking at the beginning and gradually fade into background as the students take over. This approach also helps students slowly gain confidence in using new material by carefully scaffolded stages. And by the end, they are communicating using the language point all by themselves. So you have a nice balance between structure and practice. However, it's important that this lesson framework also might have the drawbacks if you use it in an outdated way. In our further podcasts, we will consider this in detail.
Okay, now imagine you are trying to get your students really involved in learning instead of just listening to you all day. That's where OHE, Observe, Hypothesize, Experiment, comes in. It is a way to make the classroom way more student-centered. So how does it work? Firstly, observe. Forget about the lecture and let the kids actually see what you are talking about. Show them the plant, do the chemical reaction, whatever it is. The teacher can point them in the right direction and make a little introduction, but then needs to allow kids to observe things on their own. The less you talk, the more they see. Then hypothesize. Instead of telling them what's going on, ask them what they think. Get them to make a guess about why it's happening. This is their chance to use their brains and not just their ears. All you do, asking questions and gently push them towards thinking of a good explanation. This, by the way, develops critical thinking, which is among the 21st century skill. After that, experiment. Finally, let them test their guesses. Design some easy experiments so they can prove if they were right or wrong. This is when they are the most active and engaged. Here you are helping them when they get stuck, but they do all the work and come to answers themselves. In the real-life example, for instance, teaching past simple, it might look like this. Instead of explaining them ed endings, show a short video of past actions where they observe how the rule works and what actually changes. Then ask them to hypothesize, notice the pattern of what happens to the sentence in the past tense. Then give them the sentence to complete using the past simple, testing their self-discovered rule. And after this, you might direct them in case of mistakes, and together with them, you formulate the final version of the rule. Basically, the whole idea is to flip the classroom. Instead of you just talking to them, they're doing the learning themselves. OHE is the perfect way to do this. The less you talk, the more they explore and discover. More detailed consideration will be presented in our next podcast, so keep watching.
So, we have explored a few ways to shake up the traditional teacher-centered classroom and put the learners where they belong, right in the driver's seat. It's clear that shifting towards learner-centered approaches like PPP and OHE isn't just a trendy thing. It's about fostering deeper understanding, boosting engagement, and empowering students to become independent learners. By letting them take ownership of their learning journey, we equip them with valuable skills that extend far beyond the classroom walls.
Yeah, and now we challenge you to take a good, hard look at your own teaching practices. Where can you decrease the lecturing time and foster the student activity? Think about incorporating more practical activities, encouraging student-led discussions, or guiding them to discover language rules for themselves. Even small changes can make a big difference in creating a more dynamic and effective learning environment.
And if you are eager to dive deeper into practical strategies, we are waiting you for our podcast too. We'll explore specific techniques for implementing PPP and one more lesson framework in your classroom, giving you the tools you need to make the shift to a truly learner-centered approach and modern methodologies. See you soon then!